So Nvidia has really been making news about the Vera Rubin. We've seen so many news also about Chinese open source models like Zipo. We've seen DeepSeek. We've also seen Kimi K3, and we've seen so many AI stocks, actually seeing their stocks price going down. What exactly does this mean for Nvidia? Is Nvidia really still bullish? Should you still be considering Nvidia as an outperform member of the Mark 7? And is Nvidia really going to actually outperform with what is going on with Chinese open source model? On this episode of Stock Team Special, we'll actually be giving you 5 reasons why we still think Nvidia is a bullish one for investors to consider. And of course, this episode, everything is for information and education purpose only. Do your due diligence and consult your financial advisor for more guidance. And of course, this video is brought to you by stockerteam.com, the platform for retail investors to follow, track, and monitor their portfolio as well as the global financial market. Let's jump right in. So Nvidia really has seen several conversation around open weight models from China. Nvidia has been seen as the GPU king, but why exactly do people still think Nvidia is going to underperform, and why is Nvidia stock rather actually still trailing some of its peers in the Mark 7? So the setup really actually shows us that Chinese lab are actually, they are shipping these open weight models. They are cheaper to access. They are freely easy to actually fine tune. And it's so easy for anyone to actually run them once you download them. And the market is actually believing that, large language models like, Claude, like ChatGPT, Codex, and all of the models that are actually, closed-ended from the US, that they are so very expensive to actually run and to actually, depend on when you are actually deploying AI models. So the Chinese option actually are seen as the least or very inexpensive way to run AI. But what actually is the market getting wrong about this whole conversation, and more importantly about Nvidia? What we actually think is that the market is overlooking the fact that with more models, with Zipo, with DeepSeek, with Kimi K3, with Claude, with ChatGPT, or Codex, many of these models is actually a bullish one for Nvidia, because more models will actually need more capacity to actually run them. It means more compute. It means more GPU, which means more profit and revenue for Nvidia. So let's look at number one reason, especially on the more specific reason now why Nvidia is still a bullish one, and Nvidia could actually outperform. Open weight is about access, and it's not something that actually escape the GPU layer, the infrastructure layer that actually trains and does all the inference. Having open weight or open source doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to need compute, you're not going to need inferencing that actually relies on Nvidia's GPUs. And every downloads actually become an inference demand somewhere that actually needs to be met, which Nvidia is controlling more than 80% of this market. And cheaper models actually even get more used. It's just like the Jevons paradox for AI, and broad adoption will actually widen the base of accelerated computing. And anyone thinking that open source open weight models are actually going to live outside of the GPU infrastructure, that's actually not possible. In fact, we saw the news, the update from Kimi K3 that their GPUs could not even take the capacity that was coming, especially because so many people were excited over their new model, and they actually had to stop new subscription. That's number one reason. Number two reason, the moat for Nvidia is the stack. It's not just the chip, it's not just the GPU. Nvidia has CUDA libraries that actually are embedded in the entire ecosystem of inferencing, compute, and large language model orchestration. So Nvidia has that muscle memory with the CUDA library to actually be the most preeminent infrastructure provider. So we're talking about the frameworks, the kernels. You're talking about optimized platform that Nvidia actually provides, and the switching cost is measured in engineer years, not price list. So you can't just change your GPU stack. You can't just change the entire advantage that Nvidia brings on board, and you are actually going to just find it easy to move to another provider, especially when you're talking about the advanced GPUs, advanced full stack processes that Nvidia brings into the fray. Also, open modules are trained and served on top of all of this stack that Nvidia actually provides. And if you see the Nemotron model that Nvidia is actually offering, is exactly what open web models or open source models, that's exactly how they work. Nvidia's Nemotron is a very a good example of how open source actually works, because it still runs on Nvidia's infrastructure. So number 3 reasons that why we actually think that Nvidia is actually going to perform is still the systems that Nvidia actually, apart from that full stack, infrastructure that Nvidia provides. Nvidia has several systems, rack scale, designs, compute, memory, network as one unit, and they are interconnected. That provides that strategic layer for AI companies and rivals. Maybe the likes of AMD, Cerebras, they just sell different parts, and Nvidia sells the entire full stack systems, full stack infrastructure layer that actually powers AI. And that's why we still believe Nvidia is still bullish for investors to consider. So number 4 reason, and if you've watched this video to this point, like I said, this episode is brought to you by StockAtom.com, the platform for retail investors to track their portfolio, track the global markets, get news, insight, and also get portfolio ideas, which we also have the StockAtom composite portfolio that our premium members have access to. I'll get into that shortly. But let's look at number 4 reason before we go to number 5. The demand actually has many doors. Hyperscalers are racing to build and serve frontier models, and Nvidia is the one providing all of those chips, all of those GPUs. Sovereign AI, like we said in the past, nations actually want to have their own compute. They want to control everything end to end. And who do you go to when you want to run sovereign AI? You go to the likes of Nvidia, and you also perhaps work with the likes of Palantir that provides you, the Palantir ontology that allows you to actually guardrail, that allows you to actually govern AI and actually make sure the AI is not necessarily giving out your information, and you are actually controlling everything end to end. And that's why Nvidia, as several layers of its business. And enterprise are also moving from pilot to production. A whole lot of enterprise are actually now looking at how can we use AI to affect positively our bottom line. That's exactly the bigger story that is still baked in and has not even been considered for Nvidia. And there's not just one single buyer. Nvidia has different order books, from sovereign AI to enterprise to public institutions to defense. All of these layers are actually part of the entire Nvidia ecosystem. And if you've watched this video to this point, number 5, which is very key for Nvidia, Nvidia has that cadence and everything seems to be locked in. So yes, the stock might have pulled back for a while, but you can actually see a relentless yearly product rhythm that Nvidia actually provides that none of its rivals can actually meet, not even the AMDs of this world. And each generation actually resets the performance per watt bar. You could actually see that every generation of chips, GPUs that Nvidia is releasing, like the Vera Rubin, several other layers, and it's just improving the performance and bringing down the cost for hyperscalers and AI companies. So, and the ecosystem, compounds for Nvidia. And being very early, Nvidia has its own moat, and Nvidia has that opportunity. But there's still the bear case. Just to be fair, and we are not necessarily blind to that risk that Nvidia might actually have some bear case for people to actually get worried about. Efficiency gains could actually even soften near-term unit demand. A whole lot of people are actually talking about, okay, hyperscalers, would they actually continue to buy Nvidia GPUs? The likes of SpaceX, are they going to get to a point of diminishing return where they have overcapacity, and so they actually demand less and less of Nvidia GPUs and data centers solution? It is yet to be seen, but that's a possibility. But we do not necessarily see that in the near term. Custom in-house silicon, the likes of Google wants to build their own. OpenAI wants to build with AMD. Even Anthropic wants to also build theirs. Every other person or differential model companies like Anthropic, like OpenAI, they actually also want to get into the fray. Concentration risk from a few customers. So you've seen that Nvidia has not been doing so much business in China. So Nvidia is actually concentrated in the US, Europe, and some part of the Middle East, and a few here and there in Africa. So Nvidia just needs to actually broaden, and looking at the geopolitical risk, like limits, curbs, like a whole lot of limitation to sell in China, like the H20, H200, chips that Nvidia actually couldn't sell for a while, and now it's moving into doing more business there. So these are some of the concerns. And looking at going forward for Nvidia, what do you actually need to watch as an investor? You need to look at the signals, not just the forecast. Inference versus training mix as open models actually proliferate, networking as systems, sovereign and enterprise pipeline, like I've talked about, companies, countries, public institutions, and whether that efficiency actually expand the usage, or if it finally just caps it and Nvidia is not going to grow. So a whole lot of bull bear case for Nvidia has been put forward, but it depends on what you actually believe in, and that's why we have a Stockton portfolio that actually look at some of these major stocks. And the bottom line for us is open source wave will actually flood the world with models. You are going to actually even see much more open source models. You've not even seen anything. We've seen DeepSeek crashed Nvidia stock went back up. We've seen Zippo that didn't make a huge dent. We've seen Kimi K3 in the last couple of days or weeks, and we've seen how the entire ecosystem has really affected software stocks and even semiconductor stocks like Nvidia. So these models actually still need somewhere to run. People shouldn't get that mixed up. The fullest, the fastest, the more locked in place to run them is still Nvidia, and cheaper AI could actually mean more AI, and more AI still runs on the king's machine, which is Nvidia. So that's exactly what we think. And what do you think? That's why we want to invite you to join the premium membership of Stockton community and Stockton.com. So if you become a member of the Stockton community, premium community, you actually have access to the full stack of the Stockton portfolio. This is actually the public view, which doesn't show the the portfolio constituents, the bull bear case, the research articles, the presentations, and a whole lot of insight into this portfolio. Stockton portfolio has been there for the past 4 years now, and it's outperformed likes of Nasdaq 100, S&P 100, and this is not financial advice. So and there's no compulsion. You can be a member for just $10 per quarter. We'll see you in the next video where we are going to bring much more insight, but we are very happy to be back because we've been working on the stockerteam.com platform, and we are very, very happy that the platform is now further alive. You can actually come to Stocker Team to track any stock that you actually want to do any research about, Nvidia, either in any market. You can actually search any global stock, and you should be able to have access to the full stack charts, which gives you in-depth analysis. And if you are a premium member, you get more insight, more research articles, more research reports on all of these stocks. We'll see you in the next one. Go to stockerteam.com today and open a free account or become a premium member to have access to the Stocker Team portfolio. I'll see you in the next one. Take care and bye-bye.